Well, today I am really lucky to have Christina Rodenbeck. Rodenbeck is very much a German name, and I recognized it immediately. And Christina is an astrologer. Now, an astrologer is somebody that you might not have considered is an energy worker. You probably looked at your newspaper and you've seen what star sign you are, and you've been told at the beginning of the year. But I had an incredible conversation before we started with Christina, before you came on the show, Christina, and I'm really excited to talk to you. So how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, we're in lockdown here, so
Right.
Weird, but good. I'm very interested to have this conversation because we've already had a very wandering and wending conversations, haven't we? Which have been quite interesting.
In a way, that's what I like. Is I like it to go where it wants to go, and what I'm here to do is, can I give somebody another gateway or understanding of energy work, instead of like saying it's, I don't know, you tie a scarf around your head and you look into a crystal, or I mean,
Yes.
you're so down to earth. That's one thing I really liked about you straight away as well. You're really down to earth, and yet that some of the things you say, I was like, well, that's really you're really feeling the energy there. So what do you? I mean, why did you, or how did you become an astrologer? I suppose that's the first question.
It's the first question, and it's actually in some ways quite a difficult one to answer.
Yeah.
Because I have always been interested in the numinous, in the other side, in this stuff. And I remember when the first time I heard about astrology, I was a child. I was about 6 years old, and my dad was a professor at a university in Cairo. And he used to bring his students home, and I was about 6. And he had a particularly handsome student called Costa Benakis, a Greek guy. And Costa said, "I'm a Pisces." And he said, "Oh, and you're a Pisces too." And I was so thrilled by this. And I became quite obsessed with, astrology from that day onwards. Obviously, there have been, I don't know if you found this, but there have been ups and downs in my pursuit of astrology. So, I was very interested as a child, less interested as a teenager. And then I came back to astrology in my 20s.
Right. I'm fascinated a little bit because it's kind of an unusual place to be, isn't it, as a child? Was it kind of, I mean, Egypt is the place of really, the mummy and the pharaohs and the scarab of rebirth. And, it's kind of like an exciting place. There's even like the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I mean, did you have any experience of that? And you don't have to talk about it because it may be just a bit too out there, but were there any experiences you could talk about?
Well, I will talk about it a bit, which is that it is an incredible place to grow up. Cairo is an incredible place because it's not just ancient Egypt, but it's the Islamic Egypt, it's Coptic Egypt. So you really do feel that you're living on layers of history, even as a child. You're aware of this sense of things being very, 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 very old. And I think that my sense of time was extraordinarily affected by this. So, in the morning you might go out to Saqqara, which is the famous pyramids, not the Giza pyramids, but the pyramids south of Cairo. And in the afternoon, you might be in the Islamic city. And then we would be back in our suburb, which was built by the British in the 1910s. So you're traveling through time by traveling through a city. So you feel this connection I felt a very strong connection with history always, and with this understanding that people have lived lives, they have on the same soil. The other thing that I find when I look back on my childhood about, when I think about history, is I think that the awareness that people at that time in Egypt, this was the 1970s, the village people, the farmers, and even the gardeners were still doing stuff in exactly the same way that you would see on the ancient Egyptian tombs. So there's this huge sense of continuity that as well as turmoil. And, also there, Egypt was at war at part of the time that I was there. So that was quite interesting as well. And I think I talked to you about this. We lived in a very strange house there, which was a house that was full of ghosts, which were the ghosts of the previous family, who had their house taken away by the government and given to my dad's university. So we were living in a sort of occupied house. It was very strange. So I could feel them, I felt them, I heard them.
You heard them? I mean, talking or walking around or closing
just walking
doors?
up and down, walking around every night. Yeah. And because my family is very academic and skeptical, I mean, purely skeptical,
right?
This was very dismissed as the little, slightly fey child interested in all this woo-woo stuff. It was not part of the family tradition at all.
Right. So you were the one that heard the walking around, and they didn't.
No, they didn't. I was always told that I was very imaginative, darling. Right. Christy has this incredible imagination, and actually it was real.
Yes. Yeah. Did they shut you down, do you think, or was it kind of a little bit, or a bit of a put down?
I think it was shut down. It was seen as an eccentricity. I mean, it's funny to be considered eccentric already when you're 8 or 9 years old, but I was considered eccentric, and it was ignored, just not talked about, except for being very imaginative. I think it's not, and it's still in, I live in Oxford now, and it's still not considered like a proper thing to do, astrology. Actually,
right, yeah. I mean, astrology is like, astrology, I've always felt it fascinating, because in Germany, where I lived in Germany for many years, and they would always talk about, people would be talking about, well, what time of the moon is it? Whether they're going to harvest something. And if you want to harvest a tree for firewood, I think it is, then you harvest it in a new moon because there's less sap rising, so it will be drier. And if you want to harvest it for having more sap in for whatever reason, I think it's maybe building or whatever. Then you do it at full moon. But you definitely consider that these planetary. I mean, of course, the moon is a moon. It's not a planet, but it's it has an effect. And of course, you might say it's like. The Chinese have this feng shui or feng shui, which is the physical lay of the land and how it affects the energy flow. Well, of course, from their point of view, they're interested in how the planets are, where they are when you're planning to do something. So that was something that you studied. I mean, so when did you start to sort of get serious, or was there an event that happened that said, okay, I need to do this,
but I wish I could say, yes, there was this moment that I knew, because that always makes a better story. But I would say, like many things in my life, it was a gradual realization. So I came back to astrology in my 20s, quite early on in my 20s. I had my Saturn return, which is a really important point in anybody's life, which is about 28 years old, when the planet Saturn returns to the point in your where it was in the sky at the time that you were born. But for astrologers, this is considered a crucial growing up. This is when you're actually grown up. Up until then, you're still progressing. You're still progressing through your whole life, but up until then, you're not considered completely adult. And the Saturn return can be very difficult for people, especially if you've taken a wrong path or if you're going down a wrong route. Now, I was aware that I was going down a wrong route, that I had been, doing something I wasn't interested in, because, needs must, we all have to do something to earn a living.
You've got to pay the bills, yeah.
you've got to pay the bills. Exactly. So I've been doing a lot of editing and working in magazines and things like that. But I'd always known I don't want to do that. I had a kind of crisis, which was, I'd lost my, not lost, but my Saturn return consisted of losing my flat, my boyfriend, my job, all in the same week.
Oh, right.
And yeah.
Did you know it was your Saturn return?
I knew it was my Saturn return.
Right.
I knew this was happening. I knew it was the Saturn return, but I wasn't quite expecting it to be so kind of completely stop. And at that point, I started to, and I knew it was my Saturn return. I hadn't really thought, okay, this is going to be a big thing. And it came in and it hit me from the side. And I thought, I have to take this astrology thing seriously, because the timing was exact. But then I had to,
I'm fascinated because, I spent a long time in Hong Kong, and I've been fascinated in Chinese martial arts and the Taoist energy. And they, like, every 12 years, I get my sign comes up. So the dragon reappears, and I'm a dragon. And so that's actually a difficult year for me. But there are remedies that I can do. I can put up certain symbols or keep certain symbols near me, and then they are going to protect me. Now, is there anything like that? If Saturn returns, you go, okay, I'm hanging up a donkey outside the front door.
Not sort of in Western astrology, kind of not traditionally. Of course, in Vedic astrology, there is. You could wear a certain gemstone. You have to be very careful with this stuff. And there are remedies. And my, straightforward, this very kind of Western approach, I would say. My remedy really is to work with the planet, not against it. Do you know? And
yes.
if you know change is coming, you've got to make the change. You've got to be with the change. Or if you know it's time to stand still, then you've got to stand still and stop trying to push. So
like judo with the cosmic forces.
Exactly.
And judo, by the way, means the gentle way.
Yes, and that's what I would say is, instead of trying to fight it, go with it. So for example, this year, which is 2020, we'll be having a Mars retrograde, which means that when we talk about a retrograde in astrology, it means that a planet appears to go backwards in the sky. It doesn't really, obviously, but it appears to. Now, the thing to do with the Mars retrograde is nothing. Is to not push and to stop it. And some people find this very difficult. Of course, for a Pisces or a Cancer in your place, this is pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yes.
We just go all yin, relax. It's fine. But that's just a little example. But it makes life so much easier. And so astrology is about getting into this rhythm. One of the things about astrology is about getting into the rhythm of the planets. As you were describing with the moon, that's a rhythm. And all the planets have a cycle. So your 12-year cycle that you just talked about is a Jupiter cycle. Okay?
Right.
That's the planet Jupiter that comes around every 12 years. And our Western astrology does coincide somewhat with Chinese astrology. When we look at the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, it fits in with the cycle of the elements and the animals in China. There's a 60-year cycle in there as well, which we're just coming up to a crunch time with, actually, in 2020.
Crunch?
Yes.
That doesn't sound good.
Crunch.
I've been
know
a body worker.
Right?
When it crunches, something's gone wrong. Yeah. What's crunching?
Oh, it's going to be, well, we're in the crunch, right? We know that.
I was going to say, what about
we're in the crunch.
Like,
it's not, we're going through to another era, but that's
I heard it's 2 years of crunch. It's a 2-year crunch.
I believe that, at least. But actually what we're doing in the big astrological picture is we are going from one definite era, which started in the early 19th century, into a new one. So things are really shifting. And because we're at the end of this phase, which ties in with the Chinese stuff, that's a very difficult phase. It's like, when you're giving birth and you're at that, it's a very painful moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody can relate with that. And so, once you'd got that Jupiter return, and we're going back to when you're 27, and
Saturn
then
return, yeah.
Saturn return. I'm talking about the Jupiter return with the Chinese. So Saturn return.
Jupiter returns are much nicer usually, but not in your case, obviously, because it's a dragon.
Well, I did have one that literally the day of Chinese New Year, like the official day. So there's two: the one that everybody knows and the one that people don't know. The one that people don't know, on that day, just everything turned to poo. Yeah, really amazingly. I was like, wow, I've got to take this. At least if I live in Hong Kong and I'm in that morphic field, I need to take this very seriously. Not maybe very serious. I need to pay heed to it. So what did you do? Did you just go and buy a book, or did you?
It already was, because I'm a great reader, and if you want to understand astrology, read books. That's their first thing that you have to do, is read a lot, because it's a system of knowledge. It's not, I hate this thing, science or art. It's not neither of those things. It's something else. It's a system of knowledge, or a natural science in the old terms, and natural philosophy. It's a system of natural philosophy. So I read a lot, but I was fortunate to live in London, where there are some very good astrology schools I went to. I did a lot of going to lectures in my 20s and 30s at the Center of Psychological Astrology. But I really switched track when I had children.
Oh,
actually.
So how did that? Did you read more when you had kids? I mean, I'm thinking no. I think because we talked already.
No, I wanted to be at home with my kids.
Right.
And I thought, this is ridiculous. I can't, I need to do what I love. And my partner said, this is, come on, all you do is talk astrology. You read people's charts. You have to start doing something with this, because it's all. And I also felt I had so much knowledge at that point. I thought, well, I have to share it. It's ridiculous. Why do I know all this stuff if I'm not actually going to share it out? And that's when I started to see people, a lot of people. And as soon as I opened that doorway, speaking of opening doors, but people just came, so it was a flood of people coming to have their charts read.
Wow.
And I started my blog as well, which is, is very widely read now.
I've got a question, because like I talk about this quite a lot. A close friend of my family had kidney cysts, and she got incurable. She was told she's got a few years to live, and she went to a lady called Betty Shine. Betty Shine died a few years ago. I mean, really like 20 years ago. But she got completely cured. And the reaction of my father was, don't tell anyone, don't tell anybody about this. But Betty wrote a book, and the book was called Mind to Mind. It was a wonderful book. And she talks about her journey. And she said she learned nutritional hand reading. So she would look at people's hands, and she'd be able to see what supplements they, according to special, lines. And I mean, I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
But she realized.
I'm looking at my hand now thinking, God, I wish I could do that.
Right. Well, anyway, so she said that actually the hands were just a medium to connect with the energy, and she would start to get other information. So now I know it might be, especially as like there's this science of astrology, but there's also the art of astrology. Do you feel that sometimes when you're getting a chart in front of you, that there's a kind of energetic connection where you're starting to just know stuff?
Yes, you have to have that. You have to have that, because the chart is the chart's in front of you. You need the person with you as well. So because what happens is that there's is the moment that happens in the moment of astrology. It's the connection between you, the person you're speaking to, the person you're reading for, the client, and the chart. Yeah. And the chart is a map of their identity, of who they are. But it could be interpreted in many multifarious ways. Every planet has multiple meanings. Every aspect has multiple meanings. So there's no way that you can do it without intuition, and without trusting your intuition, and without, letting go of all. So you have to, it's like playing a piano, right? So if you're a really good pianist, you've been practicing and practicing and practicing a lot. And you've learned all the notes, and you can read music, and you know how it works, but you can still be a terrible pianist and still have done all that. What you need is that extra spark. And that is the difference. When you're having an astrology reading, you will find that there will be, if it's working, you as the client will know, you'll have a feeling, okay, this is something, we've hit something. So definitely. And there's also, for me anyway, there's a moment, there are several moments, but there is a moment when you can feel yourself suddenly really connect with the person, and you know that there is the story, because what you're pulling out of the chart is the story. Yeah, the story of their life. Or one of the many stories, because all of us are made up of not one story, but many, many stories. And we have the threads of other people's stories being woven into our story. So to be an astrologer, you need to be a storyteller, a historian, back to this layers of history that I was talking about, a historian, because you're studying a person's history, and that begins to, when you can start to weave a pattern for them and show them the cloth of their life, it's incredibly enriching for a person. So there's that. But maybe even more to your point, there is often a moment in the astrology reading, which especially when someone's had trauma or something very difficult, where I can actually feel, and this is not something I advertise, but I'll talk to you about it, because this is, we're talking about energy work, where you feel I can feel another presence in the room. And it's often, I can feel it, I can feel it in my body. Yeah. And I can, and it's often an ancestor, actually, someone's, grandmother, something like that, will be there. And will have something to say, but they do it through the astrology. And what the astrology provides is a structure.
So you won't say, oh, well, somebody's there. You'll just know.
I'll just know, unless it's someone who I feel would be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea.
It's not something that, because not everybody wants to hear that. It's too weird, I think. It's not necessarily what you've come to an astrologer for, and also I want to avoid, I have to say, having the kind of people who are looking for some kind of psychic reading, which is a different thing as well. As you were saying at the beginning, it's not Mystic Meg, but it's there and you can feel it. And it's like you feel the change in energy. And even if there is no very obvious presence like that, because that, like I said, is usually with something traumatic, you feel the energy in the room change when the chart reading is coming together. So it's like I said, it's like when you're listening to music, when you hear a concert and you can feel that the pianist, the music, and the instrument are all working together.
I forget what I'm being reminded of. I'm being reminded of talking with a homeopath, and it's not for the Discover Energy Work podcast, but we were talking about it, and they would say somebody walks in, I don't know, a bee sting walked in. That person is a bee sting, or they are arnica. I felt their personality walk in, because I know the vibe of the remedy so strongly, and then you start to almost, you walk in and you can feel the constellation walk in. Does that make sense? Do you feel it's a bit like that?
It's a little bit like that. It's more complex, I would say, and that is what astrology offers. not the horoscope stuff, but not the horoscopes in the newspapers, but the, not those little bites and what's my sun sign. But what astrology offers is complexity. It's what astrology says is you are a really complex person. You're not just your sun sign, you're your moon, your Venus, your Mars. This is all different, and it's how those different planets relate to each other. So you're given this opportunity to have an incredibly complex dig around. So, I see people for an hour initially, and we just will scratch the surface. And that hour, and this is the other thing I find incredible about astrology, working with people, is that hour may be enough. Maybe all they needed just to switch them a little bit, just to turn something on, just to light something up. Just that hour. But other people are down for the serious self-exploration, and they will come, once a month, once a week, whatever it takes, to dig right down through all the layers of their chart. And that can be incredibly rewarding for me as an astrologer. It's to have someone who's willing to explore themselves like that.
So I'm almost reminded of that exploration that happens in some psychotherapy approaches. So have you had experiences where people have come and through that self-discovery, self-experiencing, that they've healed themselves of some problems?
I think that's really the point of astrology is, to know yourself is to heal yourself. And we were saying just before this podcast started that, you have to do that over and over again, don't you, in life? You don't just heal yourself and then it's fine. You're going to be fantastic for the rest of your life. You do it over and over again. Some of the most rewarding people that I've worked with have actually been psychotherapists themselves. So they're used to this therapeutic process.
You know what I'm thinking when you're saying it is I'm thinking it's that same old pattern. I meditate and then I relax and I can see myself. I see the clouds of thoughts drifting past, and I no longer identify myself fully with the clouds. I say, oh, it's a cloud. I had that cloud and I reacted to it, but I am not that thought and I am not that belief. That's just something that I've been reacting to. And the more you get a distance, the more you're able to feel that you're free. And in a way you're saying, oh yeah, and you can do that. You can do that cosmically. You can actually go, well, all the way out there, by the way, there was something going by and you thought it was you, but actually it's that. And I can imagine that for that, I'm going to say that clan that connects like that, because I feel it's like clans. You've got your body workers, so that's my clan. I have to touch people or I have to feel energy. It's more of a manual thing. And then you have your, I'd say, homeopaths who are more cerebral. They're more like into these energies, and then your astrologers are way out there. And I wanted to actually ask you, and I think way out there, one of the people that very much interested me in my research as a psychologist. I did my degree in psychology. I'm not a psychotherapist, but because I get people saying, oh, Richard, I want psychotherapy. And I said, well, sorry, I can't help, but I might be able to help you with energy work, but not with psychotherapy. But one of the guys I studied was a guy called Ingo Swann. And Ingo Swann was the guy that developed the remote viewing, and he had incredible psychic abilities, and he helped people develop these abilities. But he would go out and he with his mind, and he would travel out to different planets and would literally journey there in more of a daydream kind of state or a dream state. I'm just curious if somebody like you, who's been so interested in the planets, if you've had any, I'd say, I think I can say extraterrestrial, but it sounds a little bit like, we're talking like a UFO alien thing, but I don't necessarily mean that. Just really going out there.
Yes, it's if I want to. you know, but I wouldn't say going to specific planets or anything like that. But I have do a daydream, I don't know what you call it, a sort of meditation, not really meditation,
journey,
where I can project myself up there, out there. And I get what you're saying about this, the energy, you know, different ways of working with energy. And I certainly feel that each, you know, that you need to be able to feel. And this, I think, is the difference with different astrologers. You know, you get very good astrologers, but you find out they're actually, I want to say, they're historians of astrology, really. Yeah, so they know all about it in the way that an art historian is not an artist.
Yes.
They know all about it, but they don't know how to do it. And that it's to do with the feels, you know, because you need to be able to feel the energy of what each planet actually feels like. So right now, you know, we're having a lot of Saturn, actually, which is a cold feeling. Or when you're feeling Mars, it's a hot feeling. It's that simple. And if you need to be able to let go of your ego, as you know, when you're doing any work like this, the most important thing is to be able to not project onto people, not have an ego about it, and to let that planet energy come through you, or whatever it is.
Fascinating that you say not ego. So I mean, that's a very spiritual thing to say for an astrologer, I would say. I mean, I don't know that many astrologers, so I got to go, what an awful thing to say. Yeah. So, but that's a very spiritual, I mean, that's a very high bar to let go of your ego. Have you had any experiences where you have let go of your ego? I mean, where you sort of gone, oh, I know, now I get it.
Yes. And I think that that's something that I try and do before a session, actually, is to try and let go. Because if you bring ego into a session with someone, then you're in danger of projecting your own stuff onto them, onto their chart. And you don't want to do that. You want to just be the channel and just be using your brain with all that information that you've got, and that you're synthesizing this stuff and letting it flow out. As soon as you get the ego with astrology, it becomes, it doesn't work as well. I mean, when I do a lot of writing, and I write about astrology, that's what my blog is about, and a lot of other astrologers read it. And there I'm allowed to have a bit of ego, you know. I'm still interpreting the planets, but, you know, I want the writing to be perfect, and it's partly about me, you know, or about my ideas. And that's one thing. But the actual interpretation, when you're with a person, you have to let go of the ego, you know.
It's something that fascinates me. I mean, we don't have to hang on it, but when do you know, or when was your first experience that you let go of the ego? When did you know you were, you know, can you think back? Is there an anecdote there?
Of what? Of not having any ego,
Just stepping out of the ego and going like, oh, right, it's like this. And then, I mean, because I can imagine that was like you went, got it. That's what I need to be doing.
Yeah, no, there's not. I can't think of like a particular moment that happened. Like I said, it's like I wish I could say, yeah, that was the moment. I thought, no ego, that's it. But it's not really. It's just, and also it's clear to me on an intellectual level too. You know, I need to do that. So I'm quite a cerebral person, I suppose I would say. I do think things through. I have, you know, for people who are interested in astrology, I'm a mixture between Pisces mainly and Gemini, which is a very intellectual sign. So I have those two signs working together. A mixture of the very logical thought and intuition.
Interesting. But you did talk about some gateway moments in your life. Was it when you had an accident with your heel?
Yeah.
Can we bring that in? I think we can.
We can bring it in.
I can sort of hook it in a little bit with this topic. I feel.
Yeah. Well, I tell you a little bit about astrology as well. That there are, you know, they're different, as you know, they're different planets. They have many different myriad meanings. And there's one object called Chiron, which is named after the healer and teacher of heroes, who was a centaur. And this planet, this asteroid was discovered in the 1970s, and it does seem to have relationship with wounding, in my opinion. This is my observation. Anyway, when that planet, and it has a 52-year cycle, right? So it takes a very long time. The longer the cycle of the planet, the more impact it has when it hits your chart, okay? So that's a pretty long cycle. Anyway, and it probably will come to your sun maybe once in your life or twice if you live a really long time. When it came, anyway, I saw this coming. I thought, oh, well, I better be careful because I'm going to have Chiron on my sun. I wonder what that's going to mean. Am I going to become very wise, or is it going to be, I'm going to become a healer or whatever. Anyway, actually what happened was that I went to the woods with my children. I swung on a rope for no reason, and I fell very far, and I broke my heel. So I fell straight down, having gone, having made this accident happen myself, right? So I sincerely believe that. And it was incredibly painful. It was the most painful thing I've experienced, more painful than childbirth. Horrible. I was really crying. And then I was laid up for weeks. But the actual moment of impact, and well, actually I went into shock. But when I came out of the shock, it was unbelievably painful. And the heel was, thank God it didn't shatter. It just broke and stuck. So this is a combination of Saturn and Chiron, actually, for astrology. But that happened when my kids were very young, and it was when I was beginning to really see a lot, not beginning, but I'd been seeing a lot of clients. But after that happened, then the floodgates really opened with clients. I suddenly started to see a lot. And I believe that it was necessary for me to have that pain and that brokenness in order to become a real healer. In order to help other people, because it gave me a really huge understanding and compassion about pain. I mean, we talked about this. There was more to this process, so it wasn't just that broken heel, but there was a broken heel, and it was like I felt it, and I knew it at that moment. There was a shamanic initiation. It was an initiation into this. It's like, okay, you're going to be an astrologer. Now we're going to break your heel. So now feel the pain. So now you're broken, and the cracks are where the light gets in, even if it's, and for Pisces, of course, by the way, this is all in Pisces. My Pisces rules the feet.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So Chiron and the sun in Pisces. Pisces rules the feet. That's where my broken bit's going to be, where the light comes in.
Wow.
I'm getting,
amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I did know all that.
It's very moving. I feel it's very moving. There's an energy of it. It's just it's so moving. I can't say. I just feel like moved by it. It's beautiful and painful and compassionate and yeah. Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I mean, I always feel like sometimes I feel like I'm helping people share something that's really very private, and so I do feel very grateful, and I'm sure it gives people an insight. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I think that it is. I mean, you probably do this as well, but I'm always talking about other people's stuff. I'm not talking about my own stuff. I'm always, that's my job, is other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna laugh. I just wanted to tell my story so much, and I kept on thinking, I really want to tell my story, and so I went, oh, wait a minute, what's the reverse? Because I'm a Taoist, and Taoists love reversing things.
Yeah.
And the reverse is, well, I want to hear other people's stories. That's what I actually want. that will be probably at least as rewarding as, you know, saying my story and telling my story, is actually hearing other people's story. And my story, maybe part of my story is hearing other people's story and then sharing their story, which then becomes part of somebody else's story. Do you know what I mean? It's like somebody goes, oh, wow, I've got to go and see an astrologer. I've got to go and see you. Yeah. Or I've got to, now I wonder, because I had that accident when I was at such and such an age. I wonder if that was actually my initiation, because things started happening then. And then they, you know, and I just
you
feel,
might not know it's the initiation, you know, that's the thing,
right.
You know, and that's where something like astrology helps. You say, yeah, actually, this was a Chiron transit. This, you know, who is a shaman. Chiron is a shaman, in my opinion. But what's do you relate to that pain thing that I'm talking about, the idea of pain and initiation?
Well, I mean, I met somebody today, just going through a crisis, and my own personal crisis was with my daughter committing suicide. So it was like the worst case scenario. And I've had more than one crisis, but that was worst case scenario. And I feel like your life can't go on the way it was going on. That's the bottom line. It's like, so I say, a shamanic death. I mean, I've been into this stuff since I was 24, and even before sort of 18, I was doing kung fu. But it's like, I met my Taoist master when I was 24, and it was like, well, that was the beginning of a new life as well. But
can I just interrupt and say that was a Jupiter return as well?
Oh, 24.
24 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
24 is a really significant age for people, for opening up when the path sometimes opens.
Yeah, I mean, that was phenomenal for me. I mean, I met him, and 2 days later, I was feeling energy. I was actually able to feel where sickness was in people's bodies. So I can relate to, you know, you put your hand over the liver and you could feel something, and you go, oh, you think you've got a problem with your liver. And 5 days later, I was feeling it. Didn't matter where they were in the world. So he was going over time space. Energetically, and I didn't know any of this. I was thinking it's not possible, it's not real. But when and of course it went down on its wave, you know, it sort of disappeared as well. So when you say it goes in waves, it went in waves for me. But when Emma died, I had you know, strangest experiences, but I think, well, that was 4 years ago, so that would be 52, I guess. So
Chiron return.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that's your Chiron return. So that's when Chiron, this shamanic planet, I think that I associate with planet shamans, comes back to the position it was when you were born. It happens once in your life. It's around 50, 52.
So exactly. So
something very painful.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I like to say, and I'd like to say it because I did a lot of being an advocate for mental health and depression and suicide and youth suicide. Emma was 21, and I like to say, you know, it sort of reconnected me in a lot of ways, and it opened me in a lot of ways. But I also like to say, maybe I'm not over it. Maybe, you know, maybe I don't know if this will ever heal properly, fully.
Well, that's the thing that it's not, you see, about this kind of wound, is that it doesn't ever heal. All you can do is keep it clean, keep the wound clean. That's my take on it.
As I say, like I'm so curious because I'm a Taoist, and I've been to places when actually after Emma died, I decided, you know, very much like it's the end of my life as well. What would I like to do before I die? And I went to a temple in South China where the sixth patriarch of Zen, he's a man called Huineng, many years ago, he started the temple, and anyway, he died 1,700 years ago, but his body didn't decompose. He actually was sitting in meditation posture, and he's still there. and I wanted to see it. And it looks like I kid you not. He's not a mummy like you'd see the Egyptians. He looks like he's just sitting there. You're looking for him to breathe. You just can't believe that he looks so perfect. So he really, it's phenomenal. He looks lacquered, or he looks like he's a model. And when I was there, well, the thing is, it's not about that, because when you get there, you're in the presence of somebody who's transcended something, and sort of in a way he transcended death. And I slipped in there to the space between life and death, and I was sitting there, and I was okay there. And of course, that was an important experience for me, to just go there and sit in that space. But and I did go back there a few times, because it was just so magical to be in that place. And you could go to the temple. You didn't have to pay anything to sleep at the temple. You just paid a donation, and you could spend the night in their dorm. And then they had this funny thing that you were allowed to get sort of 10 meters. You're about 10 meters from Poinong. And of course I wanted to get closer. So they said, oh, well, you can put flowers on his altar. So you buy the flowers, they're like, £100, in Chinese money. It's like, okay, it's for £100. You can put flowers on his altar. I was like, yeah, okay. I want to, it's worth it. And it was literally, you could cut the atmosphere. It's beautiful. And I know so many people that live in Hong Kong, and they don't even know that this incredible, he's the founder of Zen, Zen Buddhism, you might say, because he went to Japan. He's quite famous, Huineng. And he's also this Mirror Sutra and everything else. And he's considered a Taoist. He was a big hero of my Taoist master, Lu Jinchuan. So, I liked a little bit of my story there.
Well, I think that I can, the other step in my story was that my daughter then became very ill, which I think I told you about before.
You did. I forgot.
And I was thinking about how, the other thing about these initiations is it's often at your weakest point. Your weakness is your children, isn't it? That's your most vulnerable point, is your children. My young daughter became very ill, and she's better now, thank God. But it was 4 years of fear, and pain.
I wanted to sacrifice myself. I wanted it to be me. So that's what I feel you want to say is like, can it be me? Please, can it be me?
And that was I actually had that moment. I remember that moment. I prayed and I said, take me. Instead of, if you're going to take someone, take me. Because, that was when she was, I thought she would never get well, or she would die. And that changed me forever. I'm a completely different person. And I would say that it made me more vulnerable, but stronger at the same time. I don't know how else to describe that, but and
surrender, the ability to surrender.
You do just give up, it's like, and that sacrifice is really important, I think. Speaking of losing the ego, it's a point that I refer back to occasionally, I remind myself of that feeling.
Yeah, it's an interesting, the whole thing about these challenges which come, I never like to think it needed to be like this, I needed to have this. And then part of me says, I can see certain signs that say that maybe it did need to be like this. Maybe, it's just my, the way I see the world, but I really can't say I'll ever be able to see the world differently. I'll always choose to have her alive if I can.
Yeah.
You know, but um, yeah, it's it's kind of a amazing. Were there any? So when with your daughter, did you go to astrology to see what was going on with her? I mean, you must know exactly her birth date.
I did know exactly what was going on with her. And I knew something was going to happen because she had Pluto, which is a very heavy planet, and difficult planet, and has a very slow orbit. So it only comes around to certain its positions every 240 years. Okay. So
240.
it's, yeah, approximately. I'm just thinking 1770s was the last time it was where it is now. So when you have something like that, a very, very strong, powerful planet making an opposition to your moon, which is what she had, it can be dangerous, you know. I wouldn't say this necessarily to the client, but, you know, it's not something you would wish on someone, the opposition to the moon. And there were other things as well. So she had, you know, Saturn was opposite her sun. So there was dangerous stuff going on. So I had been, you know, I was a bit worried about it. But, you know, astrologers often say, oh, well, you know, these outer planetary things, they affect children less. Not in my experience. You know, and so I knew it was coming, but I didn't know how it would manifest. You know, I didn't know, oh, well, she will become very, very ill and be in, you know, sleep for, 18 hours a day and, you know, be unable to move. It was scary. So I could see the astrology. One of the things that astrology helped me with was to see that it's a transit. So you know that this was the hit, this is the second hit, but then it goes on, you know. And if you can catch the wave, this was what worried me, because what she had was ME very badly. If you can catch the wave out of there, you know, then you're going to probably be okay. So it's catching that wave. But of course, the fear with astrology is that you miss the wave. You know,
ME is that I can't remember what it stands for, but it's
chronic myalgic encephalitis, but also or chronic fatigue syndrome.
Chronic fatigue. So it's and people don't realize it's. I mean, I've had fatigue. It's like you literally can't get up. You literally can't move.
It's like post-viral fatigue, really. You literally can't get up, you know, in some first part of it, you know, and then it takes a very long time for some people, and some people never get over it. That was the thing that my fear. And some people die. You know, this is not discussed, but there are deaths from this.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's an energetic disease. I mean, it's a very strange disease and it's not wholly recognized. It is now. You know, while she had it, there was a lot of science going on around chronic fatigue and a lot of proof being found that actually it's a real thing. You know, there's something wrong with your energy production within at a cellular level.
Mitochondrion, probably.
Yeah, it's a mitochondria problem. So there was a lot of science just coming out. So we were very lucky with that, because up till then it was like, oh, yuppie flu, you know, it's in your head. There's something wrong with the family.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stigma around it, which was another part of this, which you must have experienced as well, a stigma around suicide.
Suicide, depression, yeah.
And ME people don't, when you have a child with ME, first of all, it wasn't even recognized here in Oxfordshire, where I live, as a thing that children could have under 14. There's no one who deals with it in the whole county. So I had to go somewhere else to get it properly diagnosed, which I did. But the stigma was really interesting as well when I look back on it. You know, the people avoiding you because you have a sick child, you know, and what's going on there.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of weird. So the people that I could connect with were people who were depressed. So like if they were depressed already, they didn't feel like they had to make me feel better, because That wasn't anything that wasn't
Yeah.
going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just some friends, they just like reached out, but like a load scuttled away, literally, you know, what I was thinking, because I know a lot of healers, and I went out and I said, look, I'm going to be a bit out of action. This has happened. And I sent out a WhatsApp to the group, to the group of friends, and it was surprising that I didn't get, "Oh, come over," you know. But I actually, in retrospect, I get it. I do understand it, and there's a lot of cultural traditions about when somebody's had a death in the family, don't visit them, because they've got an energy that's, and the Chinese, like, if you're divorced, don't turn up at a wedding, yeah, because you're divorced. Yeah. Oh yeah. And don't turn up at any family gatherings, because you know, you might infect people with divorce energy, or yeah. And then
But
there's,
I agree. I think it was like that here. You know, England. I live in England. People would never say it's because they were worried about the sickness energy. That's the truth, though.
yeah.
They were, you know, it was that. Well, is it not? Is it catching? Are we going to get ME? But is the bad luck catching? You know, and also, what have they done to deserve this bad luck? You know.
Oh, you got me. Is luck in the stars? Is it really in the stars, do you think?
Well, there's fortune and misfortune. You know, a very traditional astrologers would say, yes, some people are lucky. You know, I mean, I think this is also one of the things that astrology teaches you to relax about. You know, some people are really lucky. You know, we know this from real life.
Yeah.
You know, someone like, I don't know, just looking at, bizarrely, Victoria Beckham's chart. She has a conjunction of the two greatest benefics, Venus and Jupiter, on the midheaven of her chart. No wonder she's, you know, had a blessed life, you know, very lucky woman.
Bless her. Yeah.
Some people would say, you know, I think. Yeah, so there is luck, but you also you work with the planets, you work with what you've got. And there's luck that's given to you on a plate, and there's luck that you work for, and these two things are considered quite different. You know, there's the stuff you work for that actually gives you an incredible feeling of satisfaction, and then there's stuff that just sort of arrives. And we both know both are fine. It would be fun if it all just arrived on a plate, but actually it's the stuff that you have built that's really great.
Yeah. Fascinating. Do you, one thing I like to ask my guests is, how would you advise somebody to connect, either become an astrologer if they were interested, or find an astrologer?
Yeah.
I'm always worried that there are baddies out there that might abuse people, and I feel I want to, which of course, you know, there are cults that which use this energy work. So I mean, it's not like it doesn't exist; it definitely exists. But
well, in our world, yeah, I mean, in our world, a lot of people are in it for the power. Yeah, and it's a funny kind of power that, you know, not so much with astrology, but with a lot of energy work, you do find people who are on a power trip.
Yeah.
And you definitely want to avoid those people. First of all, if you want to study astrology, obviously read a lot. There's some great astrology schools these days. You know, there's Kepler College in the States. There is the Faculty of Astrology here. And there's a very good one online called MISPA, Mercury School of whatever, psychological. There's a lot of good ones. And, you know, one thing that I would recommend if you're looking around is that some of them have just been around longer, you know? So, for instance, like, I don't know how long Kepler College has been around, maybe since the 80s, but the faculty has been around since I think they started teaching in the 1950s, you know, so these are long established things. And I would definitely look at that. I don't think that and I think that it helps to go to lectures if you have the chance, or to be with other people talking astrology once you've got your feet in, you know, and you're you've done quite a bit of reading, and you started pulling up charts and reading them for yourself. So yes, I mean, get involved with other astrologers, become part of the astrology community. Even if, like me, you're having to do it remotely because you're at home with your kids, and I'm not going to all the conferences and stuff, but if you can, go to some astrology conferences. I think there's definitely some in Australia. I'm just thinking about your end of the world, but even Australia is really far, but there's probably one in Hong Kong.
Discover energy work is intergalactic. Any
well,
aliens listening there, we can do.
Yeah, exactly. There are conferences. I would go connect with other astrologers, that initially do that reading, because you need to get your own ideas going first. And that, there's some great books. It's a good one by someone called Sue Merlin Fairbrother, which is a good beginning astrology book. I can't remember what it's called, but that's her name. So what was the second part of the question? I've forgotten.
How do they find a good astrologer?
Finding a good astrologer. Oh, well, that is tricky, okay? Because there are now suddenly, astrology is having a moment, right?
Okay.
Which it didn't before. It was very, it's, suddenly become okay again to be an astrologer. And there are many, many astrologers out there. And I would love to say, well, just, feel the vibe and you'll be able to tell. But I think it's really hard to tell. Yeah. And I wouldn't suggest that someone with like loads of letters after their name or anything is any better than someone else, having had, because like I was saying, there are a lot of astrologers who are like astrology historians.
Right.
So they'll read the chart, but they won't have any kind of intuition or instinct about it. Or they won't really have that. Or there's, as you say, you do have to be a little bit careful. So, the faculty of astrology has a list of astrologers that they have qualified through them, which guarantees that they've actually done a course, but it doesn't guarantee that they're great. There is the Organization of Professional Astrology. To be honest, all of these things are organizations that people have paid to be part of. So that, again, doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be that good. Personally, I would always go on word of mouth.
Right.
I really would, on personal testimonials and recommendations. Or, the other thing that I get a lot of clients because they read my blog. So they've read it, they know what they're going to get, what kind of person I am. So they've looked into my mind. And there are other astrologers who do that. So, and that is a really good way to find out if you're going to like an astrologer, is read what they write. Unfortunately, some really good astrologers don't write that much. I know some excellent ones who are not writers, but I just happen to have, that's my other skill, but that is a good way, is to actually read what they've written. And otherwise, I would definitely go with the personal testimonials, with finding out from your friends. There's, I also, my other feeling with astrology, this is a little unfair to much younger astrologers, but I do think that it helps to have had a lot of practice. So you need to see, thousands.
You need to see 1,000 people, yeah.
You really do. So if you work out the math on that, you need someone who's pretty reasonably mature to have actually even gone through that many, have had that many clients, seen that many people.
Right.
And that's something that you want. And the other thing I would say is, who do you relate to? You don't want someone who, you want someone who's going to get you, who you're going to relate to, who's going to feel, it doesn't have to be the same gender as you, or anything the same as you, but just someone you can relate to, and there's a huge difference. I would say that my clients, one of the reasons they come to me is it's about education and cultural references, so if you're someone who never reads a book, don't come see me. Do you know what I mean? Because we're going to be talking a different language. Or, you know, if you're the sort of person who's, you know, you need someone who's going to have some kind of cultural hinterland that you can resonate with. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be the same. Like, you know, you don't have to both be from China or Oxford or Australia. That's not the point. But the point is that you want someone who's broadly in thinking about the same things as you.
Okay.
You know, so they're not talking a different language completely.
Right. My last question, and it might be a question that just goes, nothing happens to it. But
Nothing happened.
What is the weirdest energy thing that's ever happened to you that you might share that, like, go, well, this, I don't have any explanation for this, but this really happened.
Oh, you got me with that one. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, that's okay. That's what I feel. It's like, I mean, the weirdest thing for me was a light turning off, and I knew that it had turned off through PK. I absolutely knew, and I checked, and I thought the bulb had gone, and I went and checked everything. It was just the light had just switched off. So PK is a psychokinesis.
Yeah. So, whose psychokinesis? Yours or someone else's?
No, it was Emma's when she was a kid. So my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. So was she she was a sensitive person then?
Yeah. Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah. She is.
So, you know, I tend to talk in the present. We always talk in the present.
Yeah. I feel that my mother died a couple of years ago, and she used to hear with me all the time.
Yeah.
A lot. In fact, I mean, that's not a weird thing. Weirdest, not at all. To me, it seemed very natural. But when she died, I was crying, and I felt her come to me and stroke me.
Oh,
I literally felt that. It was very nice.
Look, thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Yeah, I hope that we have, you know, I think we've covered the ground, haven't we? It was really nice to talk to you. A pleasure. You need to send me your birth details sometime.
Oh, I'd be very interested to do that.
Yeah.